2. On page 12, Annabella owns 2 coffee shop franchises. Can you believe I just cut myself for the second time doing nothing? Sitting in this chair? Okay. I did carpentry all weekend and didn't cut myself. I sit down, I open a booklet, and I cut myself. How is that possible? Okay. It's ridiculous. Okay. Annabelle owns 2 coffee shop franchises. What's a franchise?
Small business.
It's usually a small business, but the word franchise means what?
Means multiple
Yeah.
locations.
Yeah, it means it's already been branded. It means it's not unique. So if you open a Tim Hortons already exists. So you're opening a franchise. Does that make sense? So most big companies that you see, especially with food, coffee, that kind of stuff, originally they were one place. There was a single McDonald's a zillion years ago in California somewhere that did quite well. And then they opened up a second one, which was like a franchise. If the original owners open it, it's not a franchise. But once they start letting other people own them, right, and use their name and their products and stuff, then it's a franchise. Interesting? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's good and bad, right? Like if you open a Tim Hortons, you have to pay a lot of money to be the franchise owner.
Plus, you gotta have a certain amount of money too.
Yeah, I think the buy-in is like it starts at $250,000 or something like that.
More than that.
So you can open, you become the business owner of a small Tim Hortons, but you have to buy all your supplies from Tim Hortons, right? And you have to follow their pricing, their rule. You can't change the prices because you want to. You have to be the same as all the other ones. If they decide to remodel, like change the way they all look, you have to pay for that. So there's some disadvantages, but the advantages are it's going to be busy, and you can probably do a pretty good job of pre-calculating how much money you're going to make to see if it's worth it or not. Whereas if you open your own coffee shop, right, with your name on it, right, Trevor's Coffee, you don't have to you follow the rules of anyone over. You don't have an overlord,
Probably won't be expensive.
but you're probably going to have to generate your own business. You have more freedom, but you certainly can't expect that you're going to have the people lining up the same way they do at Tim Hortons, right? Also, when you have a franchise, they pay the advertising, right? Tim Hortons commercials, you're not paying for that. It's part of your franchise fees or whatever. So,
Don't you get bonuses to you? Don't you get bonuses to you?
I don't know how they do it. They probably have some kind of lame, like you do really well, and they give you like a plaque or something saying you outsold. I don't know.
I think you get
I'm not big on those kind of things. Yeah. I worked at Walmart, and Walmart's all about that. They have their own little newsletters about Walmart employees that get married at the store and stuff like that. I found it really strange. It's like kind of cult-like.
Isn't he the richest man in the world?
I managed to get out of the Walmart chant every single time. Once they put me on it, and I panicked. How do I get out of this, right? Because the Walmart chant at the start of the day?
Yes, I worked at Walmart.
Yeah. It's the first thing, start of the day. Everybody has to stand there clapping. Give me a W. Oh, yeah. I'm not kidding you.
It was annoying. You have to remember
The worst is if you get in the middle, because then you are the what? The squiggle. Right, the squiggle. Then everybody squiggles. It's like children's playground thing. So
Isn't the guy that owns Walmart the richest guy in the world?
that family, that whole family is some of the richest people in the world, the Walton. But I found a way out of it. When it came to me, because it's all in rhythm, give me a da-da-da. When it got to me, I was like, I get it. Which letter am I?
That happened to me a couple times. I forgot
Yeah.
what letter it was, and then you had to go with the rhythm of the clapping.
Managers got mad, but they had to hit, they said, okay,
Hey,
we'll do it tomorrow.
You have to start it every day.
Yeah, start of every day, yeah.
Every
Yeah.
day.
I know.
It's part of the
Yep.
chant, like to get you motivated.
That
Yeah.
would drive me nuts.
Yeah, it's very, very strange. So,
I would be late just every day. Just
yeah, we were hiding in the aisles and, you know, because also they were trying to convert us because we were all employees of Wilco, right? I was at the first Walmart, right? Like it was just turning into Walmart. It was very strange.
When you're employee of the month and they embarrass you.
Yeah.
They announce it on the.
Yeah, it's like, what's that Dimitri Martin, that's his joke. He says, employee of the month is an example of how you can be a winner and a loser at the same time.
I said, thank God I was an employee of the month.
Yeah.
If I wasn't embarrassed.
At Walmart, yeah. I mean, if you really like where you work, I guess it's all right. Okay, so that's what a franchise is. That was really off topic. Okay. At the end of the month, her accountant presents her with graphs of the monthly expenses for each store. Okay, this is percentages. Okay. Using the graphs above, Annabella determines that store 2 is spending more money than store 1 on wages. Is this true? So let's look at the stores. So on wages, this store spends 69% on wages. This store spends 56% on wages. It says, does store 2 spend more money on wages than store 1? Do we know? Can we know?
Yes.
Right, because a percentage is not an actual dollar value, so we don't know. We know that proportionally store 2 spends more of their budget on wages, but that doesn't mean they spend more on wages. What if store 1 is 10 times the size?
Yes.
Right? So we don't know which one. We don't know the actual dollar amounts. We only know percentages. So we don't know which store spends more on wages. B. Referring to her financial records, Annabella discovers that store 1 has a total monthly expenses of $51,280, and store 2 has total monthly expenses of $37,250. Determine the amount spent on wages each month. So the first one, so store 1, of the total budget, what was the percentage? 56, so times 56%, which on a calculator would be 51,280 times 0.56. And we can punch that in and see what it gives us. So $28,716. 0.8 means 80 cents. Add the 0 at the end. And for store 2, take the monthly allocation of $37,250 times 69%. And you get $25,702.50. So which one spends more on wages? Store 1 spends more, even though the percentage is lower. Yeah. So store 1 spends a lot more per month. That tells me it's probably a bigger store, right? It's probably just a bigger store. Okay, C. Does your answer for part B confirm your answer for part A? If not, how could Annabella better represent her data using a graph. So in part A, we said we didn't have the dollar amounts. Now we know. Now we know that store one actually spends more. So what could you do to be able to figure that out without having to do the extra work? How could these graphs have been made differently?
Put the wages and monthly.
Yeah, you could put actual dollar amounts, right? So you could have, like the circle graphs. Could have shown dollar amounts. Or maybe don't use circle graphs. Maybe use like a bar graph or something like that. The nice thing about a bar graph is that you can put bars side by side and you can sort of see store one, store two, and you can tell who spent more, right? So it'd probably be easier to read than that one. Okay, number 2. And again, you see percentages, you're usually going to have to multiply by some dollar amount to answer some questions. Just expect when you see percents, you're going to be multiplying at some point, okay? Number, and I mean, you could have other answers. Anybody have a different answer for this? There could be a whole range of answers for that. So. Okay, number 2. The marketing department of the Winnipeg Free Press creates a graph showing where the paper is getting its money from. This graph is presented at a staff meeting. So, according to this, they get most of their money from advertising, which is generally true, like magazines, newspapers, that's where they get most of their money. They get some of it from newsstand sales, people actually buying the paper, like a copy at a time. And subscriptions, that means, you know, people that get the paper every day. Okay, usually they get a discount for that or whatever. That was my first job ever, delivering papers, early in the morning, freezing cold. Okay, A, what observation might the staff make from the graph? So there could be a whole bunch of answers. What do you notice about looking at the graph?
Advertising makes a lot more than new sentences.
Yeah, say observation looks like, advertising looks like it makes a lot more. Yeah. Makes a lot more money. You realize how much money there is in advertising when every business model, that's what they want. You go to watch a YouTube video, what happens? Advertising. You try to listen to free Spotify, what happens? Advertising, right? So that's where the real money is, right? That's what they really want. So that's why, you know, that's how YouTube can pay royalties, because of advertising, right?
It's like watching TV.
Yeah. And the only way to get around that is to like pay the company directly to not see the ads, right? So it's a funny thing actually. People pay money to not see ads. Okay. B.
They are.
What's that?
They are super annoying.
They are annoying, you know, and I am
Something
compelled to
else
pay.
pop up.
I just upgraded my Spotify to premium so that I don't have to listen to freaking ads. Of course, I don't know how it works. Okay, B. What percent of the newspaper's money come from each source? So, as soon as you see the word percent, you got to make percents. These ones aren't in. Oh, they are percents. Okay, what percent of the newspaper's money comes from each source? So, advertising's how much? Advertising is around 45%. Okay. Newsstand sales. Yeah, it looks like it's slightly above half. So I don't know, 23 is probably pretty good. Subscriptions, 32%. Yeah, I'll go with that. Adds up to 100, right? Yeah, I was too lazy to write the whole word. I saved myself like 4 letters.
The H part?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. C. Writing takes so much energy. It's like, as a kid, I figured that out. Like that's why I write so poorly. Like learning how to print properly was too much work, and learning how to write properly was too much work. So I just kind of put them together.
Just like
Kind of do half of each. C. Does the graph accurately represent the money the newspaper makes from each source?
no.
The graph only shows the percentage of how much is sold for the advertising use assets and
Yeah, but also visually it's not that good. What's wrong with it visually?
Like you said, it's not starting in ceremony.
Right.
Close up.
Because the graph is truncated. Which means it does not start at 0.
Think of a tree.
So what happens when you truncate is it sort of makes the smallest one look that much smaller. Think of that bowling example. It makes it look like they're getting almost no money from newsstand sales. Because look how small that bar is, right?
But really, it's up.
But really, they've chopped off the rest of it. If they were being accurate, it would look more like this. So if they started at 0 and went down, so that would be more accurate. See how I put back the missing bottoms? Now all of a sudden the newsstand sales doesn't seem so insignificant because there's a bigger bar there, right? D, how could you represent the data differently? Draw it like that. Oh, thank you.
Good at it. Oh, I just saw the test.
Yeah, draw it. This test? Did you memorize it? Okay. Number 3. Sophia selling homemade spices at craft shows and to friends and family. She's keeping track of her monthly sales and displays them in a graph. A. Sophia says that her sales have increased dramatically since July. Do you agree with this statement? Have the sales gone up dramatically? So in July, she made how much in sales? About $410. And in December, she made $460. Is a $50 increase dramatic?
No.
Yeah, if you want to shut it, sure. Yeah, I would say it's not dramatic. $50. If $50 is dramatic, you're poor. I remember when $50 was dramatic. Okay. So, no. Her sales have only increased by $50. Okay. B, how could you represent the data more accurately? Well, start the graph at 0, right? If I were to redraw this graph starting at 0, what would happen to this line? What do you think would happen to it?
Expand.
It would expand. It would start to look more like what?
A line.
Yeah, it would just end up looking, instead of like being so tilted, showing, because this exaggerates the increase. If I started all at 0, it would probably go like this. It would kind of look more like a horizontal line. There wouldn't be a whole lot of variation in the values. So by truncating it, what that does is it makes it seem like there's a greater increase than there is. But if you zoomed out enough, eventually you wouldn't see that increase. Okay. 4, a volleyball team sold fruit and vegetables as a fundraiser. That's you're better off selling chocolate. The results of the sale are shown in the pie graph below. What percent of the sales were bananas? 26%. What percent of the sales were green? That's a little misleading. We're assuming that what is green? Lettuce?
What is that?
Apples are
Apples could be green.
And
Pears?
pears and apples.
Apples?
Yeah, they could be green apples.
They could be green apples. It doesn't tell us, which it's a really bad graph. Let's assume they're not green.
39.
If the apples are red, if red apples, then pears and lettuce would be 39%. If you included the apples, then I guess you'd be at, what, 51? C, if the team sold a total of $2,300 in fruit and vegetable sales, what was the total sales amount for pears? So you would just go 2,300, and the pears were 20%. So 2,300 times 0.20, what's that, $460? Anybody else get 460?
10% has 230 plus 19.
Right, exactly. Okay, so not a very good graph because of the labeling. Hard to know what was green and what wasn't.
Plus color.
Because not all lettuce is green either.
Yeah, that's purple.
Yeah, purple. What other colors are there? Red?
Red lettuce?
Mhm.
I've never seen red lettuce.
Number 7, use the graphs below which shows the population of a city in thousands to answer the following questions. What's the population of the city in 1991? So there's 1991.
I think you skipped a page.
Did I miss a page?
Yeah.
Oh, I did. Okay. I turned it, shouldn't have turned it. Let's go back. Number 5. Use the two graphs below to answer the questions which follow. We don't even know what these graphs are of. Graph 1, graph 2. Do either of these appear to be truncated?
Yes.
I'd say yes.
How?
Because if this is 150
Oh.
and this is 120, there's no way I could get to 0 by here. Like look at how much width there is there. Or the spacing between 120 and 150. That's like 30. I'd have to go 4 times down for that to work. Like 4 of the same spaces. So I would say yes, and that would be graph 2. Looks truncated. B, which graph makes the difference between 120 and 150 seem larger? Graph 2. That's what happens when you truncate. Which graph is more accurate?
Graph 1.
Graph 1. 6. Use the graphs below to answer the following questions. What effect does using a smaller maximum have on the graph? Okay. So here's a smaller maximum at 10. There's a larger maximum. So here's the original, smaller maximum, and a larger maximum. What effect? Visually, what happens?
See more graphs in the line.
Yeah, it basically it contains more of the actual line in the graph. Notice all the empty space in this one? So it fits more of the line in the graph. If any of you do any math courses where you use that graphing calculator, there's actually a zoom fit function where it automatically changes the minimums and maximums to fit the line in. That way you're looking just like this rather than like this. B, what effect does using a larger maximum have? I don't know, created more empty space, I guess. Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. It made the line look more horizontal, right? Yeah. Fits more with the line of the graph, which also shows more slant or slope. not for me. Slope. That reminds me, I gotta put a ringtone on my phone. Uproar, I love that song. Lil Wayne, bells, ding, 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 ding. Everybody know that song? Ding, 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 ding. Put that on my phone for sure. Okay, Searles more slant slope. This one makes it more horizontal, so it's creates more space. Above the line. And it also like sort of flattens the slope.
Why does it sound like it's that way? No.
What's that?
Oh, that's her fault.
Okay.
For a moment I heard Douglas.
All right. So number 7. Use the graphs below. It shows the population of a city to answer the following questions. What's the population in 1991?
10,000.
These are in thousands, so it looks like, is that a 4?
4,000.
Yeah, 4,000. Not a very big city. Which graph exaggerates the growth of the city? So which one of these graphs makes the growth seem like it's jumping up really far?
The original graph?
No, it's the halfway.
Yeah, the one that shoots up the most, I would say this one, right? This one. Okay. That's the one that makes it seem really dramatic because it zoomed in a lot. Which graph downplays the population growth? So which one seems to not grow the most?
No, but same thing.
I'd say the one where it doesn't shoot up with the same slope. Which one has the lowest slope? Probably this one, right?
We squished up one.
The little squished one, yeah. That one. Okay. So the whole point of this assignment was to try to get you to learn to be analytical when you're reading graphs. Okay? To analyze something means to look at it very closely and to not trust it. Right? So when you're given a graph and it's based on numbers, realize that sometimes the graph has been changed to try to sell you on an idea.
Still back to banks.
Yeah. Whenever somebody needs to win an argument, they just change the graphs to make it look the way they want it to look, right? So you got to pay attention to what the numbers are, what it represents, have they truncated it, those kinds of things. Have they played around with the minimums and maximums to make the change seem more dramatic, right? To shoot up higher or not? Okay. As a politics thing, yeah, we're about to go into an election, and this could be the nastiest election in Canadian history. They're all basically, elections used to be parties trying to say the good things they would do. This time it's like, they're terrible, they're terrible. That's all we're going to hear is who's worse. So we call that negative politics. The States always had that, but it's come to Canada now. There's an election in Alberta today, and that's all they're doing is hating each other. It's not going to be very pleasant. It's brutal, yeah. It's not fun, right? But they'll use stats. So, for example, they'll say, Trudeau wasted $50 million on blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, sure, right? But $50 million compared to a federal budget, the federal budget is like, was it $50 billion? That's like somebody walking around with like just tons of money and throwing a penny on the ground. Compared to the amount of money that the federal budget is, $50 million isn't much. So again, it's deliberately misleading to try to convince you that he's wasteful. But that happens every time, right? All prime ministers throw money around like it's growing on trees, right? And it's your money, so you should care. But you shouldn't care as much about 50 million as you should about like 5 billion or whatever, that kind of stuff. So
5 billion on a pipeline.
yeah, pipeline. Yeah, this one. Yeah, that pipeline stuff is going to be nasty. Okay,
Why they haven't started?
because they don't want to start it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, it's interesting, right? That whole. On one hand, they're trying to convince people that are for the pipeline that, hey, we're buying it, we're making this happen, but then it doesn't actually get built because they're trying to appease the people on this side that don't want any more pipelines.
Well, then they gotta pay all those people too.
Yeah, it's
Once they run a pipeline through their land, they gotta pay them.
yeah,
And then they gotta pay them royalties for all the oil and fuel land.
yeah, it's
And then
interesting
if the pipeline
times.
bursts, they gotta pay them even more royalties.
Well, plus they're building on ancestral land.
There's that too.
They gotta pay, let's say,
Yeah.
people that are living
They gotta
in
pay.
all that land.
Yep,
They gotta pay the whole.
yep.
Because that's their land.
They have to make agreements with every like First Nation it goes through, and it's not that easy. It's not that easy. And of course, there's this thing called climate change that more than a few people actually believe is real.
I know, I see it
And so there's
on
that.
commercials. Do you believe in climate change?
Yeah, so it's tricky. It's tricky stuff. Because traditionally, Canada was a country that just took all the resources out of the land and sold it off, right? Right? You want to build nuclear bombs? Well, you need to get your uranium from Saskatchewan, right? You want to make food? Well, you got to get your grains from Manitoba. It's you want to burn oil? You get it from Alberta. So like it's tricky.
Trading one
The
thing
worst
for
is when
another
they
thing.
Yeah.
sold Alaska.
For $1 or whatever.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay, so lesson 3. Yeah, politics is going to be unpleasant. Lesson 3, creating graphs. Goal, create with or without technology the graph of data sets. So with technology would be like using spreadsheets. And I'll give you you don't have to do this, but I'll give you a demonstration, not today, of how you would make graphs using a spreadsheet. It's quite pretty. You can make them look really cool, really fast. It's a good skill to have. It's very easy to do. I'll demonstrate it to you.
Yeah, I did spreadsheet work in management.
Yeah. They look cool, right? Okay, so which graph should I create? Basically, you need to choose what's the best for the kind of data that you have. Make sure there's a title, labels, those kinds of things. So really, this is just practice on making graphs. Example 1. You just have to know how to make them. Basic ones. The following data. Keep in mind, data doesn't always mean numbers, right? Data is just anything you have to keep track of. So this data is based on the month it is. This data is based on how many inches of snowfall. Okay. Create a bar graph to represent this information. So unfortunately, I've already given you solutions of what it should look like, but you need to actually sort of make them on your own. All you need to do is put a title on the top, make sure you start at 0, and try to choose a reasonable number. Like when I look at this, my highest number is 9.3, so that tells me that I'm probably going to go up to 10. And I can go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 quite easily. If my highest number was 100, what might I use? Yeah, I might go up by 10, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, to make it, to spread it out nicely. If it's 1,000, maybe I'll go up by hundreds, okay? If it's something odd like 40, then I'll probably look at how much space I have on my paper and I'll be like, okay, I don't know, I'll go up by 5s or something. Okay, so just choose something reasonable. If you don't choose something reasonable, you'll end up running out of page, or it'll be too small for you to do the work. So you kind of learn by doing it. Right? And make sure you always go up by the same amount. I can't go 0 to 5 and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If I've done that, I have truncated the graph because I've cut off part of it. Okay? And because these things don't attach to each other, there'd be spaces between them. And the rest is pretty easy. A histogram. You do the same way, except that you can have the bars touching each other if you want, because they're continuous. This one goes to 4'8", and then from 4'8" to 4'11". So normally, I don't know why the space is here, but normally you would have them touching each other. Okay? You don't need spaces between them, because the data is continuous. If you were doing it on a spreadsheet, it would put them together automatically. But if you're doing it by hand, Circle graphs, you just have to recognize 100% is the whole circle, 50% is half a circle. Just sketch it. You don't have to be perfect. If you're a perfectionist and you like to make everything perfect, you need to use a like a protractor. Does everybody know what a protractor is? This thing? Okay. So if I was using a protractor, let's say I want to do show what 20% looks like. Well, if I use my protractor, like it goes from 0 to 180 degrees. And then if I had one on top of the other, that'd be 360. So I'd go 360 times 20%, which would give me 72. And then I'd put this down and I'd go to 72 and then make a mark there. And that shows me how big this piece of pie would be. If I really wanted to be super accurate, okay? You'd have to use one of these things. But just get close and we're fine. All right, I'm not going to dock you. If it looks a little, I'm not going to look at it and go, that looks more like 25% and dock you points, as long as you're in the ballpark, right? You should know what half looks like. You should know what a quarter looks like. Okay. And I think just practice them. You'll get the hang of it. If you're having trouble or you try it and it doesn't work and the answer in the back doesn't look like what you did, then I'll watch you do it and I'll walk you through it, okay? I don't think I need to do a whole lot of demonstrating how to make these. So tomorrow we can make some of these together and I can show you on a spreadsheet how to do it as well. Okay, so work on assignment 3.